live chats for National Prevention Week. Today we will be talking about prevention of prescription and opioid drug misuse. There will be a Q&A at the end, so please remember to submit any questions you may have on this topic via the comment section or for privacy via our inbox. With that being said, let's get started.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Mahanes, and I am the co-chairman for the Step It Up Coalition here in Pickens County, and I wanted to try to bring some points of view into beginning with a little bit of history on the development of drugs as we know them today, and look at some of the statistics that are important. And I'll be doing this through two short PowerPoint presentations. Now, the problem is that for a long time, societies have been dealing with the principles of pain medications in their medicinal use in taking care of pain versus the euphoric properties that they have that have the tendency to push misuse and abuse. And there are, of course, a lot of issues that surround all of that, and so maybe this little presentation will help stimulate some questions in that regard. Now, our painkiller medications today are basically all derivatives of the opium poppy plant, if everybody is familiar with what that is. And it was first discovered back in about 4000 BC in Mesopotamia, and that's the area where Iraq and those Syria and those countries are now. And of course it was lauded at that time even for its euphoric effects. It was called the plant of joy, as a matter of fact. And I think you already are saying, well, that's a hangover of today. Well, it sure is. The other references that were made to it, it was God's own medicine. It was the sacred anchor of life. It was the milk of paradise. It was the hand of God, the destroyer of grief, and on and on. Now, there were some important milestones in the development of these drugs, and one was with Hippocrates. He was known as the father of medicine, and he used it in an effort to treat disease, not use it for the euphoria. There's no particular historical document as to what diseases he treated, but it could have been mental, it could have been a lot of things. There was a Chinese surgeon, that he put that together with the marijuana, the cannabis, and used it as an analgesic for surgery. We don't know exactly what surgery he was doing, but I think that combination probably made people feel fairly good while they were having an operation. And then in 1527, Paracelsus, he made a tincture of alcohol, herbs, and opium, and he called it laudanum. Now, it was an oral analgesic, much like Paregard, the one that we've had for a long time in this country, but no more, of course. It's off the market, and a lot of older people in the audience may recognize this use and giving it to children and whatnot who were suffering with abdominal pain and a variety of illnesses. Around 1800, morphine was isolated, and it was named after Morpheus, the god of dreams. There's another reference to, sorry about that, there's another reference, of course, to the euphoric properties of that rather than what it was used for as far as pain is concerned. It had a lot of use in the Civil War, and of course its addictive properties got to a lot of people, and that's why it became known as soldier's disease, the addictive issues of that. So around 1900, they were looking for a product that was less addictive than morphine, and that produced heroin. And of course, early on, there was an act that banned the use of it's become a substitute for those that are addicted to other products, and to try to get them through a stage of rehabilitation or whatever, so that they can drop the use of these products altogether. And fentanyl and codeine, everybody's probably heard of that. And of course, they all have street names, and some of them that are important maybe to recognize is opiates are called perks, they're called happy pills, Vikes, big boys, cotton, kickers. There's a lot more of them. And the depressants, you know, your barbiturates and all that sort of business, and they're called barbs or red birds, yellow jackets, finnies. And then you have your benzos, your Xanax and Ativan and all of those that are around. They're candy and downers and totem poles and chill pills and blues. So something that's is pretty much in the street language. So what is the problem with our current crisis? Well, we're human beings, and we're all searching for relief of suffering and pain, both mentally and physically. And there was a Dr. Russell Portnoy back in the 70s who thought that opiates had such great properties in treating pain in people, and it was his contention then that 1% or less of the population were subject to addictive tendencies and whatnot, and he really pushed it being used around the country, and actually made a lot of money going around and lecturing about the topic. Well, since that time, he has now come out realizing that he did make somewhat of a mistake in doing that. The Joint Commission too came along as well, and because what they did was they designated pain as being the fifth vital sign. So everybody who comes to the emergency room or to the doctor's office and whatnot nowadays is asked that question, along with taking their blood pressure and pulse and everything. What's your level of pain? Well, of course, it's a totally subjective thing, and we as physicians, unfortunately, have to sit there with people smiling and tell us that their pain is a 10. So that has been a critical issue, I think, and some of the prescriptive properties that have happened over the years. And of course, there's distinctly overprescribing by physicians in this. There's no question about that. They're trying to satisfy their patients and keep them pain-free. And I don't. If anybody thinks that if they've gone to the dentist lately, were you surprised that when you left his office, whether he thought you were in pain or not, that you might have gotten a prescription for 30 Lortab tablets, whereas in maybe a day and a half, your pain might have been gone, and you could have just used some Advil or something like that for it. So that's a problem that's being addressed, fortunately. And then, of course, there is, I think, there's the culture of depression from economic depravity and hopelessness in the future for most people now, and they're looking for some relief, and they're looking for something to make them feel better, and they understand that under certain conditions they can take some of the medications that I've talked about above, and they feel better, whether they're getting any better in any way as far as income or anything else in their life, but they seem to be feeling better because of what those tablets can do for you. So that's a little bit of the history of it, and so now I would like to bring you a little bit up to date on some of the current statistics with this. Now, if you go up top. Wait just a second and I'll have to keep going.
That's all right.
Oh, it is? Okay. Here, drug overdose update. Here goes Salisbury. Okay. Excuse me. Now, this is a recent update that I gave to the Prescription Drug Abuse Alliance, which we had for about 7 years here, trying to educate the physicians and nurses and the community as well on the use of drugs, and I tried to bring them up to date with some statistics and to ask if we were headed in the right direction and what we were doing. Well, it turned out that the answer was no, because knowing the number of drug overdose deaths that we were having in Pickens County, which was, we're considered a red zone up here, along with Oconee County, and the highest rate per populace in the state of South Carolina. And so in 2014 we had 32 accidental deaths with 5 intentional, and the intentional means that they were suicides using these medications. And the most common one that we found in the accidental deaths, the overdose deaths, and that's what they're called by coroner description, was hydrocodone, or Lortab, now known as Norco. In 2015 there were 31 accidental and 5 intentional. So in that span of time there was really no change, despite the fact of what we were trying to do in educating the community about that. The 2016 statistics are not all in yet, but the coroner's office will have them before that period. You can kind of look at a comparison of overdose deaths and whatnot based in comparison to the deaths from opioids. They're both climbing exponentially, and opioids looks like it's trying to catch up with it pretty quickly. And when you compare the synthetic ones and whatnot to all of the others, you still see that there's a sort of a continued upward trend in that. The natural and synthetic opioids, fentanyl and some of these are involved in that as well. Methadone deaths have not climbed so critically, but as I recall, in my years as the coroner for the county, we had a number of methadone deaths, and it's not so much that methadone provides euphoria. It can help with pain, but it does have an adverse effect on the heart and can induce an arrhythmia and cause death. So where are all of these things coming from? Who out there is prescribing them? Well, there was a study from Stanford University looking at the controlled substances, that's Schedule II opioids, and guess who was prescribing them? Family practice doctors. 15 million prescriptions in the year that they studied. Internal medicine, 12.8 million. Nurse practitioners, 4.1 million. Physician assistants, of those who can get prescriptive authority, 3.1 million. Look, count that up. 15 is 27, 31, 35, 36 million prescriptions in that one study shown around the country, that number of pills that are around. Last year I went to CVS and asked to look at some of their statistics for Pickens County. And in Pickens County in 2015, almost the same in 14 and 15, there were over 8 million tablets of opioids prescribed in Pickens County, 8 million. As far as the benzodiazepine were concerned, the 2 years were pretty consistent too, over 5 million pills, tablets. I'm not saying the number of prescriptions, but I mean the number of tablets that actually went out the door. So if you look at Pickens County having about 110,000 people in the population with 8 million opioid tablets floating around, there's plenty to go around for everybody. I mean, it's just really kind of an overwhelming number to me. When you look at the CMS data, that's the Medicare and Medicaid data. This was from 2013. When you focused on the Schedule 2, there were 381,000 prescribers and 56 million claims that were given out. A lot. The lead investigator in that study said earlier studies suggested potentially aberrant behavior amongst those extreme outlier prescribers, while implying the remaining majority do not contribute much to the problem. Well, now we know that's not the case, because your practitioners, I mean, you're down the line. I mean, it doesn't exclude surgeons and all the other people. This didn't happen to study them. And believe me, I know as a surgeon, I induce some pain in people, but I've learned to be a pretty stingy guy when it comes to prescribing things. So what is the problem, once more, and the acceleration of all this business and the efforts to combat it? Well, people are intolerant of minor pain. There's no question about that. People nowadays it's a now society, and they want a quick fix. So a pill is the best way to do it. And once again, to me, I feel like that the economy is down. People are despondent and whatnot. They're not good jobs and whatnot, and they need something to help them through the day, and something that makes them feel good. It works. And the political environment is the same way. There's constant bickering. There's no lack of cooperation. There's a disregard for any public sentiment, and I think, and a lack of respect for authority. And I think all of these things imply that. And also, there's the lack of health care, the expense of it, and the mental health portion of it is grossly underserved, and I think that is being addressed. So, to me, I said, this all leads to a culture of apathy and depression, and a feel-good resource is sought. And so the opioids are there, and people are certainly searching them out. So I felt like that despite our efforts with our organization that we had, we weren't doing a whole lot. We weren't getting a whole lot done here in Pickens County, despite us trying to do that. And so when we disbanded that organism, everyone was encouraged to come and get involved with the Step It Up program, and that's why I'm here. And just as a last look here, if you look at things in a little different light and put it into perspective, you got 46,000 overdose deaths, but only 35,000 motor vehicular deaths. That used to be number one. It's not anymore. And in comparison to 33,000 firearm deaths. So the opioids are definitely leading the pack. It always takes a couple of years to get these statistics in, and I'm sure pretty soon 2014 will be in, and maybe even 15, and I suspect that top number is going to be a lot higher. So that's my little brief presentation, and maybe it wasn't so brief, but anyway, on what the development of these things and what's going on now, and so we can have a little more discussion about it if you'd like. I want to say I don't consider myself an expert on this. I have, like everybody else involved in these things, I've had to sort of learn my way along, and what some of the properties of these things are, and how they can be harmful and but I'll do my best to answer any questions that I can.
I have a question for you. Is there any difference in economic disparity between drug misuse? Any data, whether, it's because of low income or...
Well, I've never seen any actual statistics as far as that's concerned, but it's implied all the time that the lower socioeconomic, level of our community are the people that are more likely to be involved with this. Now, when you get into the upper class, if you want to say that, it's your cocaine and those things that are in the mix of things that are being used. But cocaine is not one of the high rollers as far as death is concerned. It can certainly induce death. There's no question about that. So yes, it's implied. I've not seen any actual statistics in that regard.
So what is the harm in taking a prescription drug that has not been subscribed to you or prescribed to you?
Well, you have no idea. Number one, of what its properties are, what its risks or harms that is in that, because you've not had a physician tell you that, or you don't, people that would offer you a pill don't hand you the paperwork with it that tells you of the risk or the side effects of using it. So it's just absolutely not a good idea, because one misstep, may be your last. There's no question about that.
What are some of the commonly misused prescription drugs among adults and preferred among young people?
Well, the most common ones amongst adults are obviously your opioids, your Loratab, your hydrocodone, and those things that you can easily take by mouth and stuff like that, and don't have to inject or anything like that at all. And of course the younger population knows that as well. And where are they getting them? Well, they're getting it out of their parents' medicine cabinets. That's the issue there. And they have these. One of the most dangerous things that I've heard of is these so-called farm parties. That's PHARM, not like a country farm. But that's where people bring all their pills and dump them into a big fishbowl, and then people reach in and get a few and take them and just see how they makes them feel. I mean, that's just unconscionable behavior as far as I'm concerned, that anybody came up with that. It just seems to me that there is an element in our population out there that's constantly trying to derive a new method of people getting high. They just make up these things like this farm party business so that everybody can come in and have fun. And of course the other thing is that usually involves alcohol. That's the other problem with that. So when you mix those two, you've really got a pretty deadly combination. Now, one point, whether it's would come up otherwise, but there is a move right now by the FDA in trying to modify medications that are being made where they cannot be conveniently crushed or dissolved and whatnot, so that they can be melted down and injected and stuff like that. They're also having medications in a form that the only way that they can benefit you, I mean, talking about the opioids mostly, is that they are not into your system until they get into your gut. It's got to get down into your small intestine before it dissolves and stuff like that with those properties to get into your system. So you can't do anything with it on the outside and make it more convenient or concentrated to inject it or something like that, which is good, no doubt.
And I have one last question, probably the important one. What are the physical signs that someone is abusing opioid?
Well, they'll show the general signs of nervousness, maybe sweating. They're not paying attention. They're not paying attention in class. They may be drifting off to sleep or doing something like that, and so it does give you a little bit of a clue that something different is going on with that person, and that maybe medications are responsible for that. So, yeah, so people need to watch out for that, and especially in their kids, if they come home and it's a totally different Johnny, that comes away from school and he's looking kind of funny and not paying attention and stuff like that, maybe something's going on. Now, one other thing that the medical society is getting involved in is that most states now, with the exception of Missouri, have what's called a PMP. It's a resource. Sometimes that the P's escape me what it means, but anyway, it's a database that a physician can go and look up a given patient and see what their history is of medications that they have received. And so right now the state well, like I say, with the exception of Missouri, and a number of the states are now starting to cooperate with each other, like South Carolina with Georgia, South Carolina with North Carolina, so we can go and check people in that regard too, in their database. And so if you have somebody, and what the deal is right now is that people that are on Medicare and Medicaid, if they're in your office, it's a mandate. The state is mandated that you look that person up. So in our office, basically, everybody crosses a door. Our nurse can go into that system, pull their record up, and we can see, because it may be the first time that we're going to see a patient. So it's nice to know what the past history of that patient is. If they're getting prescriptions from 5 different doctors through Pickens and Greenville County, well, then we're alerted. Hey, well, this is not. They do make it convenient, because they have several websites that you can go to, read the articles and things that are with it, and take the examination and get through that, in addition to all the other educational things that you have to do to renew your license. So I think the appropriate people are getting the message. If they can just get the message out and get people to cooperate. Now, physicians are pretty independent scoundrels. Sometimes they really are, and they feel like that they're autonomous, and and they're going to do for their patients what they want to do, and that's fine. But I can remind them all, if any of them are watching or listening today, that DHEC and the DEA are out there looking at them, and they're looking at their numbers that they're prescribing, and you may get a knock on your door. So be careful. That's what I'd say. All right.
I think this about wraps it
Does that
up.
wrap it up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Bailey, well, that was good.
Yeah, it
Good.
was. So
I hope it was educational.
very educational. So on behalf of Stepping Up Coalition of Pickens County, we would like to thank you all for tuning in. A special thanks to Dr. Jim Haynes for taking time out of his day to sit and speak to us. So if you have any questions later on, please inbox us and we'll try and get you the answers.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Bailey. Thank you.